Hi, everybody. Today I'm going to be talking about essay structure, and we'll be talking about the 5-paragraph essay, which you may all be familiar with since that's the way most people teach essays. And we're going to talk about what are the pros and cons of the 5-paragraph essay and why some people say to move away from the 5-paragraph essay. And then we'll also be talking about what is most important in essay structure if you are not using that 5-paragraph essay formula that you've always relied on. Now, I am, if you recall, some of you may be getting credit for watching this video. If your class is required to watch this video as an assignment, at one point in the lecture, I will be giving you a secret password, and then you can enter that password in on Canvas in order to get credit for having watched this video. So look for that. In the meanwhile, you can take notes. So I'm just going to shrink myself up to a corner, and we can use this presentation. So we'll talk about the 5-paragraph format. We'll talk about what you're doing in an introduction, what you're doing in thesis statements, what I'll be looking for in body paragraphs, and what topic sentences are, and we'll look at conclusions as well. So this may look familiar to you as the format, the structure for a 5-paragraph essay. It's often depicted with these triangles and squares, and that's because we like to think of the introduction as being like a funnel because it comes from the most broad statements that you make at the beginning of the introduction, and then it funnels down to more specific statements that you're making by the end. The final statement at the end of your introduction being your thesis statement, that little dot that's right there, should be the most specific thing because it's a specific claim you're making or a specific argument that you're going to be developing. Then your body paragraphs, I've divided this into 3 here because in the 5-paragraph essay structure, as you probably well know, you would have 3 body paragraphs before beginning your conclusion. And then your conclusion is like a reverse funnel, that triangle there, because it starts very specifically, maybe reviewing or restating your thesis, the specific statement, and then it becomes more broad with general statements that you might be making to leave your reader with. So you probably are very familiar with the 5-paragraph essay structure. What's the matter with the 5-paragraph essay structure? Has any teacher ever told you that you shouldn't be using the 5-paragraph essay structure, or that you shouldn't be locked into it, a slave to it, that you should be trying to move away from it? This is a very common thing that instructors of English and writing will tell you. So what's wrong with it? Well, let's look at what's right with it first. There are pros and cons for the 5-paragraph essay. Some pros: it does encourage you to write and organize your thought as you write. It does encourage you to organize your thoughts into specific paragraphs, and paragraphing is very important in essays. It also encourages you to clearly express your argument in that thesis statement. It tells you part of the formula. Clearly express your central claim at the end of your introduction. That's not really a bad thing. It encourages paragraph unity. So paragraph unity, which I will talk about, you are focused in your body paragraphs. Each one has a topic sentence, right? According to the formula, a topic sentence that says what that paragraph is focused on, and then you stay focused on that point throughout the body paragraph. That's also a good thing. So when someone tells you the 5-paragraph essay maybe is not the greatest, that's not what's wrong with it. It's not that you shouldn't stay focused in your body paragraphs, that you shouldn't have some organization in mind when you write your essay. The cons: what's really wrong with the 5-paragraph essay? It's about that it encourages limited thought, or really that it discourages you from looking beyond having only 3 points, right? Having only 3 things that you say to support your central claim. It encourages needless repetition. The way that the 5-paragraph essay often gets taught to students, it doesn't have to be written this way, but the way that it often gets taught is that you state your claim and then you state all of your main points. And a lot of times for students, that turns into writing entire sentences that are expressing what their paragraphs are going to be about, when that's not really what's being asked of you. When you are asked to list the main points you will cover, they don't want you to write out entire sentences so that your whole introduction becomes just a preview of what you're going to write later. That should just be a brief listing of what your main ideas are going to be, in the same sentence as your thesis. But if you write them all out as sentences there, and then you repeat them in your topic sentences, and then some teachers will tell you to repeat them again in your concluding sentences. So then you're saying it, and you repeat it again, you review it in your conclusion paragraph, and then sometimes you might be writing almost the same sentence once in your introduction, twice in a body paragraph, and then again, and you have multiple sentences that get repeated as many as 4 times in your essay. This is needless repetition, and it's boring to read. It's boring writing. And so this is what the 5-paragraph essay has become for a lot of students. It prioritizes the formula over the content, and students feel like they have to follow these guidelines, this structure, no matter what, when maybe they have more than 3 points to make. Maybe they have 4 points to make. Maybe they only have 2 points to make, but they also want to address 2 counter arguments. Maybe they have 3 or 4 points to make and they want to address counter arguments. You can have far more than 3 body paragraphs, or sometimes you only have 2 strong body points to make in body paragraphs, and then you force yourself to come up with a third one because you think you need that third body paragraph, even if you've already met the word count or the length requirement. And then what happens is that third body paragraph just kind of repeats, and it's saying the same thing that you've already said in a previous paragraph. This is not good writing. So these are aspects of the 5-paragraph essay that we want to move away from because they're not encouraging good writing. But the 5-paragraph essay, where does it come from? Is it something that we should just do away with entirely? Well, think about classic Greek argument, what's called rhetoric in the time of Aristotle. The structure of an argument was actually during for oratory, for speech making. They had these steps in the rhetorical structure, what we would call the argumentative structure. The exordium, it would start with the exordium, the narratio, the partitio. Well, the exordium is like the opener. It would be the attention getter. It hooks the attention of the audience, and then it would introduce that broad topic that they're going to be speaking about. We have that in a 5-paragraph essay, right? The hook in your introduction. The narratio is like a narration. It's giving background information, giving readers what they need to know is what we do in our essays. In the speech making, it was giving the audience what they need to know before the before the speaker moves on to their argument. So sometimes it would have to transition to that central argument, and that's what the partitio was. A partition. It's almost like a dividing point between the introduction and the rest. Just like your thesis divides, it comes at the end of your introduction before the rest of your argument, and it clearly expresses what the point of the argument is going to be. It clearly says what you will persuade the reader to believe. It indicates how you will persuade them too. So it previews those main points, what evidence or points you're going to use. This is also part of that 5-paragraph essay. We would call it a thesis. This is where it comes from, classic rhetorical structure. As a speech would go on in ancient Greece, you'd have the confirmatio and the refutatio, and you'd end with the peroratio. It's hard to say. The confirmatio, it's confirmation. It's confirming or supporting your central claim. This is like the body of an argument. So it would be like your body paragraphs. This is where you present the evidence to support your argument. Then the refutatio, it's the refutation. You're refuting, you're arguing against the opposing views. This sometimes it can be in the body of your argument. You might have, in fact, you may have been taught to have always have a body paragraph that addresses the counter arguments or the opposing viewpoints. That's a good technique to have. It could be more than one body paragraph. Sometimes it's your entire essay is specifically refuting the opposing viewpoints. But I'm of the mind that doesn't have to be in an argument. You could have an argument that just has your points and doesn't have the points refuting the opposing argument. Remember, though, if you are going to devote entire paragraphs to the opposing viewpoint, you have to be refuting it or arguing against it. Otherwise, if you're just giving equal time to both sides of an argument, you're just writing an informative essay, not an argument. You're just saying some people say this and some people say this, and then you let the reader decide. Well, that's not making an argument. So then they would conclude with the peroration, the peroratio. It's the closer. We would call it the conclusion, right? You review what you've covered in a fresh way. You might encourage the readers to do something differently, think differently. We call that a call to action. A lot of times it would connect to the hook. It would connect to the beginning, and it brings your essay full circle. We'll talk about that. So this classic Aristotelian rhetorical structure, there's a lot that's good here for an argument, and a lot of the 5-paragraph essay encourages this. We're not necessarily going to throw, as they would say, throw the baby out with the bathwater. You want the baby, throw out the dirty bathwater only. So you just want to get rid of that repetitive structure. You just want to get rid of that thinking that you have to stick with that limited structure, that limited thought. But an introduction, there are certain things an introduction does. The first part of an essay, you're trying to capture your reader's attention. You have that attention getter. You don't want to do away with that attention getter. It may be part of the 5-paragraph essay, but it's still important. You want to hook their attention, and then you lead into what is the background on your topic or this problem that you're debating. What is the history of this issue that you're talking about? What is the debate over it? What do different sides say? And then you want to transition from that, just giving background or saying what two sides of a debate say, transitioning into what you say and what your argument is. This is always at the end of your introduction. This is your thesis statement, and it needs to be clearly expressed. For that attention getter, that hook, you might think about giving some interesting background about the topic in the form of like a general statement, a surprising statement. That should lead right into that background information. It should help you to transition into talking about your topic and its background. You might start with a quotation, something that's thought-provoking and has something to do with your topic, but then be sure to comment on who said it and transition from the person saying this quotation into your topic. You can't just have a quote that stands alone and then start talking about your topic and there's no connection between the two. Likewise, if you ask a question about your topic, a lot of students like to do this. Asking a question might draw in your readers because they feel like you're talking directly to them. But you can't just ask a question and then start talking about your topic and there's no connection between the two things. So you be sure to maybe answer your question or otherwise transition to your topic and your background information, maybe by commenting on how this is a big question that's important to a certain debate, right? You might state this surprising fact, a puzzling statement, something like that, but no matter what, it's going to lead right into your background information. It's going to lead right into your topic. If you start with a short story, this is a common technique to draw readers in, like an anecdote from personal experience or a short little hypothetical story that actually draws readers in if it's well told. Again, it should lead into introducing your topic and your background. This should lead right into the rest of your paragraph. I'm talking about coherence and transitioning from one thought to the next. So, I'd also like to mention, I might mention it later, if you start with a short story or a short anecdote like that, a lot of times a hook like that can be its own paragraph by itself. I'll give an example of that. Actually, I'll give an example of that right now. You guys in my class, if you're in the English 1A class I'm currently teaching, I had you read Is Google Making Us Stupid? And he starts with this story about Stanley Kubrick's 2001 A Space Odyssey. And he's telling, he's kind of explaining what happened in that story. He quotes the robot HAL 9000, who's pleading for his life. Dave, will you stop? And then it's talking about the malfunctioning machine disconnecting its memory circuits. He says, Dave, my mind is going. I can feel it. He doesn't get into his point or why he's sharing that story until the next paragraph. This entire first paragraph works as a hook to grab your attention and make you wonder what he's talking about. Again, if you're strictly sticking to that 5-paragraph essay structure, then you can't do something like this. You're supposed to do all of your introduction in 1 paragraph. A hook is only 1 sentence and it leads to the background information. Well, good writing doesn't follow formulas that way. Good writing has ideas and takes new structures and new forms depending on the content. All right. So back to our presentation on the ways to start your introduction. Okay, so you got background, quotation, question, maybe a little narration. No matter what, however you start your introduction, you need to make it coherent. It needs to lead. 1 sentence needs to lead to the next. Coherence is important, not just in the introduction, but in the body paragraphs that are to come. Every sentence needs to flow to the next sentence. 1 sentence leads logically to the next sentence. So I like to call paragraphs chains of thought, right? How do chains work? 1 link, it connects to the next link, right? So if 1 link in your chain is broken, so if 1 sentence is not clearly connecting to the next sentence, then the whole thing falls apart. The chain doesn't hold together. It's hard to follow your thoughts from 1 sentence to the next if 1 sentence doesn't logically lead to the next sentence. So paragraphs end up becoming choppy. They read like lists. They're listy. They're a list of unconnected statements, and it's hard to follow your reasoning. So be sure that each sentence picks up from some thought in the previous sentence. Maybe you are repeating a word that you mentioned in the last sentence, or you're referring to something that you mentioned in the last sentence somehow. Sometimes you use transition words like however, therefore, in the same way. There are whole lists of transition words and phrases that you can put at the beginning of sentences to make it clear how that sentence builds off of the last sentence. You need to use these sparingly, though. You don't want every sentence to start with one of those transition words or phrases, because then that gets repetitive and hard to read also. So your introduction, you have to have a hook, and then it transitions well into giving background information. And then as you're giving background information, maybe you're saying what the history of the topic is, or what the main sides of the debate are for this problem you're going to make an argument about. Then it needs to transition well from the background into your thesis statement. You want to make it clear that you're no longer talking about what the main sides of the debate are. Now you're saying what your side of the debate is. You're indicating what you are arguing. And you don't need to use first person. You don't need to say, in my opinion, I think. In fact, most of the time for thesis statements, if you start it by saying, in my opinion, or I think, or I believe, you can cut those words out and it will always strengthen your argument. So instead of saying, I believe the internet is making us stupid, I believe the internet is making us dumb, you just say, the internet is making us dumb. That's a much more assertive, strong statement. So a common way, though, to bridge from your background information into your topic is to maybe explain why your topic is important right now and then make an argument about it. Or it could be a few sentences long, indicating a more specific debate when you were talking about a broader, more general debate. I'll give some examples of an introduction coming up. But you're going to conclude that introduction paragraph with the most important idea of the essay, your thesis statement. This is your argument. A thesis statement, it might remind what the topic is by stating it again. I mean, you should have clearly established what the topic is, but if you indicate it, that's good, and then you move on to what's clearly an assertion or a claim about that topic. You do not have an argument in your thesis statement unless you're making that specific claim about your topic, some opinion that you're going to support, and why, the reasons why you are making this assertion, the reasons why what you are claiming is true, or how you will support your claim. So the functions of that thesis statement, you might clarify the topic to the reader just by repeating it a little bit, and then you express a judgment or opinion on the topic. Provide the reader with some insight about what's going to come later in the argument. Here's an example. Say you're writing about our topic. You have this catchy title, The Great Downgrade, because you feel like people are being downgraded. You have a hook. In 1969, a research institute at Stanford connected to a laboratory at UCLA through an experimental network called ARPANET, and the first message was sent through technology that would eventually become the internet. Okay, like an interesting background information, right? I mentioned that as one technique. Then you're going to go into the background of your debate. Today, the internet has become an indispensable part of our lives, like electricity and water. We can't live without it. Every day, billions of people go online to communicate and share and consume media. Some critics, however, caution that the internet may be more than just a useful communications tool. They argue that all the time we spend online may be harming us. You're introducing our debate. Okay, good. Now, you want to transition to your specific argument, which is far more specific than that it may be harming us generally. So you say, for example, some suggest the internet might be making people more distracted and less intelligent. This is a problem that everyone in the world should be concerned about, especially since there appears to be clear evidence that it is true. So you make it clear what your specific debate is, and you indicate which way you're leaning, and it leads right into your thesis statement. Constant internet use appears to be reducing intelligence by decreasing attention spans and encouraging only shallow reading and thought. This is not the first time in history that technology has affected our intelligence. And if tech companies have their way, it will only get worse. Okay, this is a 2-sentence thesis, and that's fine, but you should probably not go more than 2 sentences. Sometimes it's hard to fit in all of the points you want to make in one sentence to express your argument and list your ideas. You can do it, but sometimes it's good to split it up into a couple of sentences. You notice I don't say, I think constant internet use appears to be reducing intelligence. I just make it a strong argument. Constant internet use appears to be reducing intelligence. I actually qualify it there by saying appears to be reducing intelligence. And that goes back to the last sentence. Look how each sentence here leads to the next. I give some historical information, and then I indicate the passage of time by saying today people do this. And then I say every day this happens. And then I say some critics, however, and that indicates I'm going to talk about some change of thought. And then I say they argue, referring to those critics. And then I say, for example, which means I'm referring to their arguments, an example of their arguments. I say this is a problem, and this is referring to that example, right? And then I say constant internet use appears to be is referring to that evidence. This is not the first time in history, right? So this is, again, referring to what I had just been saying. Each sentence leads to the next sentence in a clear chain of thought. And it's not always from using transitional words like, for example. I use the term for example, so I do use transitions, but it's not just that. I'm also referring to sentences that came earlier. Okay, so you end with your thesis statement. Your intro is not just 4 sentences long, but it does have 4 parts. Look at how each part is multiple sentences. This is a well-developed introduction. But now we're moving on to our body paragraphs. And this is really the meat of the sandwich, right? This is the most important part probably of your entire essay, because where you're proving your argument. So the body is a set of paragraphs that develop the idea that you expressed in your thesis statement. You're going to make a list of main ideas that support that thesis statement. Each main idea becomes the main idea sentence for a body paragraph. Well, okay, so you don't necessarily need to make every paragraph about a point that supports your thesis statement. Again, like I said before, you could argue against an opposing viewpoint. And you are going to be coming up with main idea sentences. We'll call those topic sentences for a body paragraph. Arrange your ideas in some logical order as you write your body paragraphs. So maybe you go in the order of importance. Maybe first you want to talk about this, and then you want to talk about this, and then you lead up to your best point. Maybe you save the best point for last. Or maybe you want to put your best foot forward and start with your most interesting point, and then you move on to further points that are equally as interesting. Or maybe you go chronological order if you're talking about something that happened over a series of time, the passage of time. Body paragraphs must be. This is what I'm looking for in body paragraphs. I'm not looking for that you have 3 body paragraphs. I'm looking for that they are unified, meaning they're focused on making a single distinct point. So I'm looking that they are coherent. They flow clearly, like I was just talking about. One sentence clearly leads to the next sentence. It doesn't seem like a list of unconnected statements. And then I'm looking for that they are adequately developed. They are supported with more than just your general statements, your opinion statements. I'm looking for concrete support in every body paragraph. Okay, so let's talk more about that. Unity. You guys have seen these popcorn tins before? Have you ever had a popcorn tin for Christmas, and you get 3 different flavors of popcorn? You have your cheddar, you have your butter, and you have your caramel corn, right? And they're divided into 3 little spots like that, separated. This is what body paragraphs should be like. Each body paragraph must focus on its own point, its own like flavor of popcorn. That point must support the thesis argument. It shouldn't be there unless it's supporting your overall argument. And it should be separate from the points that you developed in the other paragraphs. Just like you wouldn't want to have caramel corn mixed in with your cheddar corn. You want to keep them separate. I'm talking about this point in one paragraph, then I'm talking about this point in another paragraph, and then I'm talking about another separate point in my final paragraph. And they need to be distinct from each other. Right? You don't want to you don't want to be talking about multiple points in one paragraph where you're drifting from one point to another, just like you wouldn't want to have your flavors mixed up. You also don't want to have 2 body paragraphs that are essentially talking about the same point, because you would be disappointed if you opened your popcorn tin and you really wanted caramel corn, and instead you had two thirds of it were cheddar corn, right? You had butter, and then you had cheddar, and then you had cheddar. What? Where's my other point, right? Where's my other flavor of popcorn? So it's just a kind of a way to illustrate the idea of keeping your ideas separate in separate body paragraphs. Having strong topic sentences can really help you to stay focused on what you're talking about in each body paragraph. So here's your thesis statement. Constant internet use appears to be reducing intelligence by decreasing attention spans and encouraging only shallow reading and thought. This is not the first time in history that technology has affected our intelligence, and if tech companies have their way, it will only get worse. Okay, I'm not saying this is the thesis statement you're going to use. Nobody should be using my example sentence as their thesis. The same ideas might come up, but you shouldn't be using my sentence. But if this were your thesis, you have now previewed certain points you're going to make. You're going to argue that the internet is reducing our intelligence. Okay, by doing these things, right? So you could focus a paragraph on attention spans. You could focus another paragraph on shallow reading, shallow thought. You could focus another paragraph on the history of technology affecting our intelligence and how this has happened before. And then you can talk about tech companies and how they're going to make things worse. Okay. You have possibly 4 body paragraphs. Body paragraph 1, you come up with a topic sentence. One of the most obvious ways the internet has affected the way we think has to do with our short attention spans. You're going to develop this in a body paragraph, maybe quote from Nicholas Carr or some other source. Body paragraph 2, you say, the net not only keeps us so distracted that we can't concentrate for long, but also keeps us jumping from one headline or link to the next, discouraging us from looking too deeply into any one topic or text. So this topic sentence kind of kind of helps to transition from the last paragraph to what you're going to talk about next, because you talked about, oh, it's not just distracting us so we can't concentrate. That's talking about attention spans. And then you're going to move to talking about shallow thought, how we don't read too deeply or read for very long. Okay, and you're going to develop that with source support, probably from Nicholas Carr or something else, right? Topic sentence. Of course, being leery of the effects of new technology isn't a strictly modern phenomenon, and the internet isn't even the first technology to have an effect on the way we read and think. Okay, so now you're going to be talking about some of the history of people who were worried about technology, or worried that certain new technology was going to affect people or our intelligence specifically. Nicholas Carr talks about that. You say the difference today is that Silicon Valley tech companies, the difference from back in history, again, you're transitioning from the last thing that you were talking about, is that Silicon Valley tech companies and the advertisers who make money from the data collected on internet users have a vested interest in keeping us all mindlessly clicking away. And you're going to maybe talk about data collection. Nicholas Carr talks about how people make money from, us constantly clicking and moving through fast and not spending too long on one website. So you can see here that my topic sentences, they're not all repeated. The bad 5-paragraph essay, what it tells you to do is it tells you that you should repeat and list. It says you should always repeat your argument. It says that you should write a really boring topic sentence like, one way that the internet has affected the way we think is to, oh, look, that's kind of what I did in the first body paragraph. There's nothing wrong with a topic sentence like that. But then when I go to the next topic sentence, I don't say another way that the internet has affected the way we think is to. I don't say a third way the internet has affected the way we think is to. I don't say the last way the internet has affected the way we think is to. Every topic sentence I've written here has a different structure. It leads, it flows from the previous paragraph in an interesting way, but I'm not writing the same sentence over and over again. It's that needless repetition in essays that we want to move away from, right? Repetition is formulaic and it's boring. We don't like boring writing, okay? So development is the other part of a strong body paragraph. Now, you should have your body paragraphs, again, just to review, they should be unified, focused on one point that you're making. They should flow clearly from one sentence to the next. Have that strong topic sentence is good. That's not repetitive, but really the bulk of your body paragraphs, it's about development. You need to make your point, stated in such a way, right, that it's clear. Then you need to introduce source support to make your point more believable, to prove it as evidence. So development, I'm talking about evidence. You're developing your point in a paragraph. You're not developing it if all you do is just make general opinion statements. Anyone can BS their way through some argument by just repeating themselves and saying things in different ways. No, you need to provide evidence. That's what strong academic argumentation is all about. A well-developed paragraph includes source support from some sources. Every body paragraph should cite quoted or paraphrased material from a source that we read, or in your research paper, some source that you found and that you read. But don't just drop the quotes in the middle because you're like, oh, he's requiring a quote or some source support in each paragraph. Don't just drop them in like a bomb. They should be introduced. Introduce quotes by telling the reader who said it or what it's from. As you lead into the quote, I'm going to be talking about source introduction and integration, quote integration, in more detail as we move on. You might integrate it into your own sentence sometimes, or you provide, in doing so, whether when you're introducing it or integrating it, providing any necessary context is very important. Just throwing in a quote isn't always clear. What was the writer talking about when that quote appeared? What were they talking about before that? What did they mean by that? And that's where analysis comes in, because your source support doesn't speak for itself. You need to explain it. After introducing a quote or paraphrased support material, analyze it. By analysis, you discuss it's important. You discuss why it's important. That's what I mean. You explain what it proves. You explain how it argues, develops your argument, demonstrate, show how it is proving your point. This is why you never end a paragraph with a quotation. If you end your paragraph with a quotation, then you lack any concluding thoughts. You lack any closing remarks. You lack any analysis for that quote. You're just moving on after quoting something. Even if you develop and support your paragraph's main point well, you still might not be done. So you proved this point that it lowers attention spans. Well, have you proved that lowering your attention span does actually reduce your intelligence or really, harm the way we think? That may be something that you need to develop too. How the underlying assumption there is that a shorter attention span is bad for our intelligence, right? And that a longer attention span it means better thinking and higher intelligence. Well, you have to prove that. You need to show how your point is actually proving your central claim from your thesis as well. Relate your paragraph's point to your thesis, and then relate it also to the next point you're making. You'll make you might want to make a transition at the end of your paragraph to the next paragraph, but only if you see some clear connection between what you're talking about now and what you're talking about next. Otherwise, sometimes your topic sentence can do that transition itself, like I just showed you with my example topic sentences. Okay, in your conclusion, you're gonna leave the reader thinking about your topic. You're going to try to leave an impression on them. Don't develop new points in your conclusions. If you are bringing up a new point in support of your argument and then developing it with source support, that's a body paragraph. It's not a conclusion. And if that's your last sentence, then your essay lacks a conclusion. So be sure to review your ideas. Use new sentences, though. Remember, we're not being repetitive. Your argument should be clearly stated throughout. Your argument should have been stated in your thesis, and then it should have been developed clearly in your body paragraphs. So if I have to read through your entire essay and I don't I don't see a statement of clearly what you're arguing until your conclusion, well, then most of your essay is not making a strong argument, and it's probably more like an informative essay that just ends with an argumentative statement. I want to see you developing your argument throughout. So state it in your introduction at the end of your introduction in your thesis statement. Don't wait till your conclusion to express your argument. So compose some final thought in your conclusion, some thought to leave your reader with. Often this is a call to action. Sometimes it connects to the hook or the previous statement at the beginning. So if it connects back to your attention grabber, it brings your essay full circle, and that's useful. If you recall our reading, Is Google Making Us Stupid? Nicholas Carr returns full circle to that hook that he used about 2001: A Space Odyssey and the artificial intelligence HAL, and he brings his whole essay around. Sometimes you leave your reader with some sort of encouragement for them to take some action. Stop surfing the internet so much. Maybe go try to read more books, right? Make some change in their life, or at least some change in their thinking and their opinion, because you're trying to persuade them, right? So I want you to think about this structure in your essay as you're writing it. Don't think about the length of your essay when you're writing your rough draft. An essay's structure and how well it's developed is always more important than how long it is. An essay that is structured well and well supported throughout, like I've been talking about, even if it doesn't reach that minimum word count, it's always going to get a better score than an essay that does meet the word count, but is not clearly structured and lacks support and analysis, right? Someone can, like I said, BS their way through an essay and they meet that minimum word count, but they just keep repeating themselves. Their paragraphing is confusing. They don't use sources to support what they're saying. That's not good writing, even though they met the word count. So always think about the structure and think about how well you're developing your ideas rather than the length. Follow those guidelines and then follow the essay prompt, which I will be giving to you in the upcoming days, and write a strong and well-developed first draft. Don't worry about that word count. Once you have a well-developed, strong, rough draft, then go back. Go back then and check your word count. Select everything except for your works cited page. The works cited page is not it's not counted in your word count. Select everything but the works cited page, check the word count, and then think, oh, did I not meet the word count? Where do I need to expand? And there are any number of ways that you can expand an essay. Maybe there's one paragraph that's shorter than the rest, less developed than the rest. Maybe you can find another quote that you can introduce and then analyze that helps the point in that paragraph. Boom, maybe you've met the word count then. Or maybe you raise a new point and write a new paragraph. There are a few different ways that you can do it. And I don't mean for you to just, write wordier, longer sentences to meet the word count. No, that's bad writing. I don't want you to just repeat yourself more to reach the word count. No, that's bad writing. You would expand on your argument, making your argument better, adding value to it, and then that would expand your paper. Okay? So, just stop sharing here. I hope that this talk was helpful. I hope that you didn't skim through it. I hope that you had a chance to listen to it and you go on and put our secret password in, and you're able to actually use these guidelines and these techniques, and you should have a better idea of what I'm expecting now in your first essay in this class. Okay, I'll see you guys in class.